At 2 o'clock in the morning, while most of London slept, a lone man sat hunched over a computer in a modest North London flat. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the machine and the faint crackle of a dial-up modem. On the screen, systems belonging to the most powerful military on Earth. No balaclava, no underground bunker, just a man, a keyboard, and a question that had obsessed him for years. Are they hiding something out there? That man was Gary McKinnon, and his story would spiral into one of the most controversial hacking cases in history, entangling conspiracy theories about UFOs, international law, mental health, and the limits of state power. Some would later call him a dangerous cybercriminal. Others, a whistleblower who stumbled too close to secrets never meant to be found. And Gary himself, he would insist he was just looking for the truth. Gary McKinnon was born in 1966 in Glasgow, Scotland, and grew up largely under the care of his mother, Janice Sharp. His childhood was unremarkable on the surface, but even early on, Gary showed signs of deep introspection and social difficulty. He struggled to fit in, found it hard to read social cues, and often retreated into solitary interests. Years later, he would be diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, a form of autism that can involve intense focus, obsessive interests, and difficulties with social interaction details that would later become crucial to his legal battle. In the 1980s and 1990s, computers became Gary's refuge. Not just games or casual use, but the deeper mechanics, the way systems spoke to one another, the invisible architecture of networks. This was a time when cybersecurity was still in its infancy. Passwords were often weak. Entire networks were left exposed, and the internet as we know it today was still a wild frontier. By the late 1990s, Gary had fallen deeply into online UFO research communities. He consumed declassified documents, eyewitness accounts, and long-standing conspiracy theories suggesting that governments, particularly the United States, were concealing evidence of extraterrestrial life. One idea gripped him more than any other: the belief that NASA had digitally altered or removed images showing UFOs from publicly released space photographs. This belief was not unique to Gary. For decades, critics had accused NASA of airbrushing anomalies from images. Some cited inconsistencies, others testimony from former employees. None of it constituted definitive proof, but for believers, the absence of proof was proof itself. Gary wanted to see for himself. Between 2001 and 2002, during late-night sessions from his home computer, Gary began accessing US military and NASA computer systems. Not through sophisticated zero-day exploits or advanced malware, but through shockingly simple means. He scanned for computers with remote access enabled and guessed passwords. Often, he claims, there were none at all. This point is crucial. According to Gary, and not seriously disputed by investigators, many of the systems he accessed were poorly secured. No firewalls, default passwords, open administrator privileges. To Gary, this felt less like breaking in and more like walking through doors left wide open. Still, what he was doing was illegal. Over the course of around 13 months, Gary accessed computers belonging to the US Army, Navy, Air Force, Department of Defense, and NASA, allegedly more than 90 systems in total. He left messages on some machines, including one that would later be widely quoted: "Your security is crap." But Gary insists he never deleted files intentionally, never sold information, never sought money or power. He says he was searching for one thing only: evidence. And then, according to Gary, he found something. The most controversial moment in this entire story comes from Gary's account of accessing a NASA computer at the Johnson Space Center. He claims he stumbled upon a list titled "Non-Terrestrial Officers." To him, this suggested not metaphorical language or experimental programs, but literal extraterrestrial personnel. Even more intriguing, he says the list was associated with fleet-to-fleet transfers, which he interpreted as evidence of a secret space fleet. Skeptics argue there are many alternative explanations. Non-terrestrial could mean non-Earth-based command structures, or even classified satellite operations. Fleet could refer to naval assets. There is no independent verification that these files meant what Gary believed they meant. But then there was the image. Gary has claimed that while browsing NASA image files, he saw a high-resolution photograph of an object hovering above Earth, smooth, cigar-shaped, with no visible rivets or seams. He says it did not resemble any known spacecraft. Before he could download it, the connection dropped. When he logged back in, the file was gone. There is no saved copy, no screenshot, only Gary's memory. To believers, this is the smoking gun that slipped through his fingers. To critics, it's an unverifiable claim shaped by expectation and belief. And to authorities, it was irrelevant. Because by 2002, the United States government was paying attention. In the aftermath of the September 11th attacks, cybersecurity paranoia was at an all-time high. The idea that a foreign national had accessed military systems, even unsecured ones, was alarming. US officials would later claim Gary caused hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage, disrupted military networks, and impaired national security. Gary disputes this fiercely. He argues that any disruptions were caused by administrators shutting systems down after discovering breaches, not by his actions. Independent analysts have questioned the scale of the alleged damage, noting inconsistencies in official estimates. But again, no consensus exists. In 2005, the US formally requested Gary McKinnon's extradition from the United Kingdom. The charges he faced carried a potential sentence of up to 70 years in a US prison. 70 years for a man who had never been convicted of a violent crime, for actions committed from a bedroom in North London. The extradition request ignited a firestorm in the UK. Civil liberties groups, politicians, journalists, and mental health advocates rallied around Gary. Central to their argument was his mental health. By this point, Gary had been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome and severe depression. Medical experts warned that extraditing him to the US, where he would likely be held in a high-security prison far from family support, posed a serious risk of suicide. Gary himself said he would not survive incarceration in the American system. His mother, Yanis Sharp, became a tireless campaigner. She spoke to media outlets, lobbied politicians, and reframed the case as not just about hacking, but about human rights. Her message was simple. Whatever Gary did, a 70-year sentence was disproportionate. The British public largely agreed. But the legal process dragged on. Year after year, appeals, reviews, delays. For Gary, the uncertainty became its own form of punishment. He lived under the constant shadow of extradition, unable to plan a future, terrified that any knock on the door could be the end. Meanwhile, the conspiracy theories grew. Supporters questioned why the US was pursuing Gary so aggressively. Was it really about computer damage, or about what he might have seen? If there was nothing to hide, critics asked, why not try him in the UK? Why insist on extradition? Others pushed back, arguing that this narrative romanticized hacking and ignored the seriousness of unauthorized access. To them, Gary was not a whistleblower, but a trespasser who happened to have an interest in UFOs. The truth likely sits somewhere in between. In 2012, after a decade-long legal battle, the UK Home Secretary made a historic decision. Citing human rights concerns and the risk to Gary's life, the government blocked his extradition. For the first time, a British citizen accused of crimes against the US was allowed to stay on mental health grounds. The decision was celebrated by supporters and criticized by others who feared it set a dangerous precedent. But for Gary, it meant freedom, or at least relief. The US later dropped its charges. The case was over. But the questions were not. Did Gary McKinnon uncover evidence of a secret space program? There is no definitive proof. No documents, no images, no corroborating witnesses. Only his testimony, filtered through belief, memory, and years of trauma. Did the US overreact? Possibly. The severity of the threatened punishment, especially given the lax security involved, remains controversial. Was Gary a hacker, a truth seeker, or something in between? That depends on where you draw the line between curiosity and crime. What is undeniable is this: a single man driven by obsession and belief managed to penetrate some of the most powerful systems on the planet, not with superhuman skill, but because the doors were left unlocked. And in doing so, he exposed vulnerabilities not just in computer networks, but in how governments respond to those who challenge the boundaries of secrecy. Today, Gary McKinnon lives quietly, largely out of the public eye. He maintains that he never intended harm, that he was searching for answers, that the truth is still out there, and perhaps that's why his story refuses to fade. Because it sits at the uncomfortable intersection of technology, power, belief, and the eternal human urge to know what lies beyond the official story. If you want to continue exploring mysteries where fact and speculation collide, where unanswered questions linger long after the headlines fade, make sure to watch our next video.